Everyone please stand. That walk-up song was for our Mariners. Good afternoon and welcome to the meeting of Rotary Club of Seattle number 4, named for being the 4th oldest club in the world and also one of the largest. I'm your club president, Beth Knox. As we convene today, we respectfully acknowledge that we do so on unceded Coast Salish land, specifically the ancestral land of the Duwamish, Suquamish, Stillaguamish, and Muckleshoot tribes. We acknowledge and pay respect to the first peoples who gathered here, to elders past and present, and to all Indigenous people. Now here at Seattle 4 Rotary, we enjoy music, singing, and words of inspiration to kick off our meeting. Leading our music committee today is Raymond Tymas Jones and accompanied by Ryan Bunbury. Following the music, I invite Bill Center to share our inspiration for the day.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be with God as our Father. Family are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow. Let's take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Please be seated. I could always use a spotter, though. How many of you remember Bill's good rules? Hey, I'm not going to repeat the joke. Anyway, I ended up at the Westin. I'm glad I'm here. JFK, Bill Gates, Matthew McConaughey, and many others said it out loud. Life is not fair. I've even muttered those words to myself on occasion. And yet, with every turn of the earth, one of our most precious commodities, an essential ingredient in productivity and success, is distributed fairly and equally to all: time. How often have I said, I don't have enough time, or I don't have time for that, even though it's obvious I have just as much time as everyone else. The question is, how do I spend my time? Famous Navy sage Admiral Hyman Rickover once observed, every hour has 60 golden minutes studded with 60 diamond seconds. Precious indeed. Yet, I seldom ask myself, is this the highest and best use of my time? Probably because I'm worried that the answer is never going to be, yes, you really do need a nap. How often have I given up on a dream, scrapped a goal, or passed on a great opportunity because of the time required, only to realize the time passed anyway? I have wasted a lot of time, but I've never regretted the time I invested in others. Time is precious, but we can share it with those in need of encouragement, help, and relief. How will we spend our time today, this week, this month, this year? Perhaps we will invest a few of our golden minutes helping a fellow human for whom life has been unfair. Amen.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. Great words of inspiration. And thank you also to Raymond and Ryan. That was an amazing rendition of Let There Be Peace on Earth. We appreciate all of the Rotarians who have stepped up to make our meetings a great experience for you, like our meeting reporter, Dan Mead, for capturing the summary of our meeting so we can share it all back with you in Friday's newsletter. Our online meeting host today is Brad Barber. We appreciate you, Brad. And our greeters here at the Rainier Club, Ken Colling, John Hojaboom, and Gina Hall. I'd like to also introduce some of our guests who we have here today. We have, would you please stand when I call your name? Barton DeLacy, who is a guest of Lynn Lindsay, Kathy Williams, and Janice Weinmiller. Welcome, Barton. I understand Barton has filled out a membership application, and we are thrilled to hear that. That's great. Mark Sander, guest of Virginia McKenzie. Mark, welcome. And Ann Bremner, guest of Linda Lowry. We have Andrea Suarez, guest of Stephen Morse. Andrea, welcome. And another member prospect, Jared Gross, guest of John King. Welcome. Glad to have you here, Jared. And Bill Hogan, guest of Doug Seto. Bill, welcome. We're glad to have you here. And lastly, we have Rob Labasco, guest of Jimmy Collins. Rob, yay. We're thrilled to have you back, Rob. Oh, yes, please, Faith. Michelle Tanner, welcome. All right, we're so glad to have all of our guests here today. And now we are ready for our short program today, and I'm so pleased to introduce this speaker. I had the great opportunity to work with Mike Gastineau in planning the Special Olympics USA Games. Mike is a freelance writer, author, broadcaster, and communications consultant. Today, he's going to share the fascinating story about the 1991 University of Washington football team, and I'm sure regale us with many other stories and anecdotes, because I know that to be true with Mike. Mike, welcome.
Okay, a few more. Okay, did I get settled? I've never been in the Rainier Club, and the first thing I'm going to do is put a ring on this table. Pretty excited about that. I did not find out, to be honest, and thank you, Beth, for that. I didn't realize I was the opening band today until just a few minutes ago. I didn't know Ann was going to be here, and I'm looking forward to hearing her speak. And Ann, opening bands, it can go one of two ways. Usually the opening band comes out, they hit their mark, they get out, and everybody forgets about them. But sometimes, when I was 15 years old, a bunch of us went down to downtown Indianapolis, the convention center, to see a band called Uriah Heep. We loved Uriah Heep. Don't ask me why, but we did. And we got there, and we didn't know what the opening band was, and the opening band came out, and they blew stuff up, and they set stuff on fire, and they spit blood all over the stage, and none of us could remember Uriah Heep by the end of the night, but we sure knew who Kiss was. So the opening band Be careful, Ann. I mean, I won't do it on purpose, but if I blow you off the stage today, that's how showbiz goes sometimes. I was asked to speak to the group, and Beth was kind enough to mention my latest book, Fear No Man, about the 91 Huskies. But I was told very firmly in an email, now listen, man, don't bring any books, don't sell any books, don't talk about your book, no commerce, don't do anything that might encourage anyone to go buy your book. So, people who know me know I'm a rules follower from way back, woo, and so I would never dream of doing that. I decided the right thing to do was not sell books here, but I will be on the on-ramp to I-5 on James Street after lunch. And if you'd like to stop and buy a book, I got a basket of bananas, and I'll give you a book and a banana for $25. So that's a pretty good deal. Fear No Man. We'll get to that later. I didn't know I was going to be heckled here. That's fantastic. You hear a guy's going to come on and talk about sports, and there's always people that would go, I'm not a sports fan. I don't know much about sports. I don't care. I'll talk for a couple of minutes today about what sports can bring to a community outside of the obvious. I don't know how your Saturday night was, but mine was interesting. My wife and I were in town. She went to the Mariners game and spent 18 innings behind 4 drunk guys, one of whom decided not to wear his shirt. And the guy who wasn't wearing his shirt spent the first part of the game, every time a Houston pitcher would wind up, yelling, "Bach! Bach!" And Renee finally got his attention somehow. I hope she didn't touch his shoulders. But she got it and said, listen, for there to be a balk, there's got to be a runner on base. And he goes, are you sure? She goes, yeah. So that's her day. Then we spend the night in Seattle with some friends. One of my friends, he works for the Mariners. The other, she works for the Kraken. They're both in crummy moods because the Mariners lose an 18-inning game. The Kraken get poleaxed by Vegas on opening night, so they're in lousy moods. Renee spent 18 innings explaining the balk rule to a shirtless drunk guy, so she's in a crummy mood. I come into the party. I've been at Husky Stadium. I've been on a Husky party boat. I'm pie-eyed and happy. I couldn't be more thrilled to be at this thing. So I was kind of the wrong guy maybe for the party. But we started talking about it and just the power of sports in the community. Think about it. 47,000 people went to T-Mobile Park, 35,000 people at Husky Stadium, and another 14,000 at Climate Pledge Arena, all in one day. At the Husky game, I witnessed, the mesmerizing effect sports can have on people. As the game started, it started at 2:30. The Mariners were underway. People were checking their phones occasionally to see how the Mariners were doing. As the Mariner game went on to the 7th inning, to the 8th inning, to the 9th inning, scoreless, everybody realizing, well, this game is one swing away from ending. And if you were at the Husky game, you know this. I'm not saying everybody, but 90% of the fans had their phones out, and they would sit there. They would have the phone out, and they would watch a play and then look at their phone. And then watch a play and look. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. A great sports event like that M's game. It is a thread that runs through an entire community like a power line. It's every neighborhood, rich and poor, every ethnicity, every faith, men, women, kids, grandma, grandpa, everybody feels that surge you felt when Cal Raleigh put the M's into the playoffs a couple of weeks ago. That surge you felt when they concluded that remarkable comeback in Toronto, and even that emptiness you felt when they lost that game in Houston, it's felt by everyone and felt at the exact same time. And I think having shared experiences like that makes a community better, especially at a time where finding something that we all agree on. I mean, I'm at breakfast, it's like pancakes or waffles. I go, I don't know, waffles sound kind of fascist. And the guy says, well, you want pancakes? I go, yeah. And he goes, what, are you woke or something? I'm like, it's like nothing in our life anymore doesn't turn into an argument. So that feeling we all shared over the last couple of weeks with the Mariners, and we'll share it with the Huskies occasionally, the Kraken, or any sport, it's unique to sports. There was a beautiful moment in Boston last night. You talk about a shared feeling. A beautiful moment that involves a guy a lot of us knew, or certainly knew of. They had a huge tribute before the Celtics home opener to Bill Russell. And it was beautiful. The poet laureate from Boston gave a poem. They had a song. It was just a beautiful thing. They showed a video of Russell, and his playing was one thing, but his activism. Bill Russell was one of the first of his generation of black superstar athletes who said, we are going to speak out about things. We'll speak out about things that we don't think are good. And it was, the proof in this is that Russell was one of 11 athletes who attended what's known as the Cleveland Summit. in 1967. The Cleveland Summit was 11 African-American athletes, including Muhammad Ali, who had just announced he was not going to go to Vietnam, he was not going to join the Army, and if he had to go to jail, that's what he'd do. They all wanted to meet with him to see why he was doing this. So they met. It was an incredible moment of social activism and civil rights, and they all decided to support him. You know, it's another thing sports can do. It can unite a community through that power line effect, but it can also, and it often has over the years, forced us to discuss topics that we may feel uncomfortable about. You know, racial relations or equity or inclusion, diversity, equal pay. You know, these things come up, and they're uncomfortable. They're not easy conversations, but so often I find sports at the center of it. And, you know, it's happened so much that, and some people get so uncomfortable, that a phrase has cropped up over the last several years. You know, when people are uncomfortable about something or they don't quite see the world the way you do, they say, hey, stick to sports. And I hear that. I've lost friendships over this because people have said it to me. And I always think, how dare you? What do you do that's so important that you get to have an opinion, but an athlete or an actor or a broadcaster or anybody else can't have an opinion on things? You don't have to agree with the opinion. But yeah, shut up and dribble. Remember that one? LeBron James dared to say something. It doesn't matter if he's right or not, but shut up and dribble. Think of how insulting that is. Think of that. It's amazing. So sports plays a crucial role, I think, in getting discussions about a lot of things. You know, you think Colin Kaepernick or Megan Rapinoe or LeBron James. These people have been willing to be leaders. Bill Russell, the late, great Bill Russell, willing to be a leader and speak out on things that need to be talked about in our community. So it's another thing that sports does. And finally, sports will play a crucial role in this community and in a lot of communities in the next decade. Our city's not what it was 5 years ago. I mean, there's no hiding that. And the challenges that face us right now are many and daunting. And there's no easy solution. And one of the ways we'll solve some of those problems, not all of them, but some of them, is getting people back downtown. You know, you got to get people back downtown. And hopefully workers will come back, but I don't know. It feels like society may be changing that way. But one way we can get people back downtown is sports events, Mariners and Seahawks games, Sounders and Rain matches, Kraken and Sonics games, and we'll get to the Sonics in a minute. They'll come next summer for the MLB All-Star Game. They'll come for the World Cup in 2026, the Rugby World Cup in 2031. Sports will play, along with things that I'm sure Anna's going to talk about, and our other leaders will talk about, sports will play a crucial role in helping this city get back up on its feet and in helping get the downtown vibrant again. Okay, I'll wrap up with 3 questions I think a lot of sports fans in Seattle are asking. 1, when are the Sonics coming back? Answer, I don't know. But I believe in all my heart it's going to happen. Too many people are playing footsie right now with it, and too many people are kind of being coy. I know Todd Lywicki very well. I've known Todd for a lot of years. I've spent a lot of time with him. I don't think he'd be as out front on this if he didn't know something that maybe the rest of us don't know. So I do believe sooner rather than later we're going to hear an announcement about the Sonics coming back. The second question, yeah, go ahead. Go wild. You're eating up my precious time here as the opening act. Second question, first time in Seattle history people have asked this question. What is wrong with the Broncos starting quarterback? It's a long answer. We'd be here till midnight. I don't think it's unreasonable to dismiss. I think Russell created a bubble for himself. I think he's got a lot of advisors. I think he's got a lot of people around him. I think the way you stay in that bubble is to tell him everything's okay. I think that bubble was burst when they opened the season up here, and he spent 3 hours just being vociferously booed by the crowd. I think that shocked him. I think it shook his confidence for the first time in his career, and I think it's a lag effect. You're seeing a guy, in my mind, who doesn't look confident. You got to be so great to play. The worst quarterback in the NFL is great. You got to be so great to play that position. You got physical, mental, all of that. If your confidence isn't right, and I don't think it is, you're going to struggle. And then the third question I think Seattle fans are asking and dying to know is, where can you buy my books? And you can buy them anywhere you buy books. You can buy them on Amazon. And Fear No Man, by the way, as a nod to the idea that sports can be important in a community, Fear No Man received a Washington State Book Award nomination this year. I'm so proud of that. It's the first sports book to be nominated in 8 years since Boys in the Boat, and I'm real, real proud of that. Proud of the work I've done, and great to talk to all of you again. Thank you very much. I've got more.
Go Sonics indeed. I told you he'd be entertaining. Thank you, Mike. All right, now, for our main program, or Shelby, well, the time will tell. We'll see how you do, Ann. I also know Ann well, and she will do a fantastic program here. Our Seattle City Attorney, Ann Davison. We have, and I actually want to say thank you to Lynn Lindsay for helping us to bring Ann here for our program. And past President Mark Wright will lead a conversation with Ann and introduce her up here on the stage. At the end of the presentation, of course, we'll have questions, as always. Kathy Williams will be our mic handler here at lunch, and Ken Grant will monitor the questions on Zoom. So please put your questions in the chat on the Zoom call, and Ken will call those out as well. For those who would like to have their question answered. Now, let me bring up past President Mark Wright to introduce our main speaker.
My goal is that no one falls off the stage today. And if you'd like to come up, that would be great. I'm going to read the introduction. I think this is a great topic because I don't think there is a greater question posing to the city of Seattle in terms of what do we do about public safety. I think it's been a crisis for a while in Seattle, and we've got someone leading the fight against crime and also what we do about this multi-headed problem. Ann Davison, I'm going to read her bio, is the first female city attorney and first mom to hold the highest legal office in Seattle city government. Yeah, that's worth applause. Her career in public service began more than 30 years ago when she worked as a caseworker in the U.S. House of Representatives. So over the past 3 decades, Ann has been a champion for those without a voice or power. Since being elected as Seattle City Attorney, Ann has focused on returning real-time accountability to Seattle's criminal justice system through a series of policies, including the High Utilizer Initiative, we'll get into that, close-in-time filing, is that how you say it, close-in-time filing? That's part of it, and also internal process improvements in the criminal division. She is committed to working together with all members of the city's criminal justice community to reduce crime in Seattle and enforce our laws and our values. So prior to becoming city attorney, Ann worked in private practice. Since 2005, Ann has focused on areas including civil litigation, immigration, sports, contracts, business transactions, employment, and intellectual property. Ann received a BA in, is this too long?
Getting long. Let's just keep going.
This is the one that your office provided
Yeah,
me.
we're gonna be reducing that.
I'm kidding. No,
You're funny.
it's good. We need it. She got her BA in sociology from Baylor University, a JD from Willamette University College of Law. She worked for, and get this, Seattle Supersonics
And he said
from
it correctly.
1996 to 2001.
We will still continue sports, evidently.
Okay, we want to hear more about that and your predictions. She became a practicing attorney and an arbitrator in Seattle in 2005. So please give a warm Seattle for welcome to Ann Davison.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to try my best not to mess up this program. I'd like to start with just a really basic question, Ann. When you decided to run for city attorney, take me back to that moment.
Well, that will take us into a different turn than we just had in the opening band. So it actually is a very real, raw moment for that. If you hadn't heard about why I decided to do this, I have lived in Seattle for 25 years. I moved here in January of 1996, joined the Sonics. 6 months later, we went to the NBA Finals. So I have lived in this town as a single woman and when it was electric and amazing, and now I'm a mother in this town. And I'm an adopted person, and it literally was at the deathbed of my birth mother the day before the filing deadline. And I knew that this was the impact seat, that really this one change could have a cascading effect in our public safety system. And I frankly was just looking for someone who was going to be brave enough to do it, and I didn't see anybody doing it. I knew it was the right thing to do. It was not personally convenient, but it was absolutely the right thing to do for the city. So that's why I decided to do that.
Okay. You inherited a backlog of about 5,000 cases. Take us back. I'm not sure what that alarm is, but we'll ignore it for now. Why was that backlog so big, and where does it stand today?
So when I did start, and it was talked about by my predecessor, but really when I got in, I had a bigger understanding about what was happening. First, because I brought a first of its kind data and transparency team at the city attorney's office. There was not publicly available data for us to understand what was happening there. And so really it was just a not paying attention, in my opinion, of the internal processes of what was happening. And so cases would come over from Seattle Police Department and they would literally go to the back of that queue. And so they were just methodically going through. And it is not just a part of COVID. It had happened back in 2019, and then there had been a concerted effort to try to dig out from under it. But there was, importantly, not any internal changes. And so that backlog grew back, and then COVID happened and exacerbated that, and that grew to that 5,000 cases, which is literally, every time Seattle Police take a police report and they decide to send that over because of a misdemeanor prosecution that they think is worthy for us to look at, that was victims and sitting for that. So I put a stop to that in February. I said we are no longer adding to that queue. That is not how we are going to change the message of that our laws matter and misdemeanor crime does matter. We need to handle that in one type of a way, and then we need to start to do things on real time. So we are being responsive to misdemeanor criminal activity that's happening in the city.
Yeah. To catch up on that backlog, though, you had to just throw out 2,000 cases.
It was about 2,000, and it was a sad thing to do to me, but really there's no other way to start to do with what we need to do now. We would be consistently looking backward and prosecuting past tense over a year from now. Some of them had sat for 2 years. On average, they were over near 180 days were sitting. The longest was 363 days, I think, we had sat and waited. And so that means that someone committed a crime, a victim was waiting, and there was no social response to that criminal activity. And our collective social response should be our laws matter, and that's not conduct that we want to see happen in our city.
So I'm going to frame the next question with the sort of overarching idea that a lot of people would like to know in lay terms exactly what you're doing now that your predecessor and the system wasn't doing to improve public safety. And I think we can couch some of this based on the quarterly report, the second quarter for this year. Give us a quick overview of what that report said and how that reflects on public safety.
And so it's important to note that when you're even talking about a quarter two report, that was instigated by council in December prior to my taking office, which was not required by any of the predecessors. I'm the 10th city attorney for our city. And so what was asked was for us to provide some information about a diversion, which is something before charges are filed, and demographics about the accused. And that's important information for us to know, but we mirrored that with the same types of questions and information that's available about the victim, because then to me that gives us a holistic picture of what's actually happening in our society. And so now we have those quarterly reports that, again, is from my bringing in a data team to actually inform us. And it's the only way I can see that I would be able to make decisions, or we as a city would be able to understand what's happening here. You, sitting in the public, should not have to try to figure out what is broken and not working. We should be telling you, these are the things that are not working, this is where we're trying to fix it, and I think that that's part of my responsibility to do that. So we have those reports now, they're on our website, and we're working on our Q3 one.
And so just a bit of a recap, the filing decisions, those filing times are down, way down from
That's
what they were
right.
before.
They are. They were over 3 months to make a decision as to whether or not to make a filing charge or to decline it. And we have that down to 3 days. And it really is just, looking at what we can control within our own four walls, right? That's the only thing that I'm in charge of is our misdemeanor prosecution and what we do, which is a spectrum, right? From declining to alternatives to mainstream prosecution, and then all the way to prosecution, which is involving a court, right? But importantly, what's happening in that is we saw in 21, the numbers of cases of why we had to decline because of a lack of victim participation for domestic violence. We had to decline cases this time last year, 27% of the time because of victims not wanting to participate. Now, because we've reduced that time that we are making a decision, it doesn't mean we're doing it hastily, but we are contacting victims now very soon thereafter of receiving the report. We have seen that be reduced to 8%. So now we are seeing domestic violence victims wanting to participate more in the process. It is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, month of October. If you don't know, that is a main predicate for other violence is domestic violence. Once someone becomes quite emboldened and feels strong to do it within the privacy of four walls outside of public view, often that becomes a reason to then put it outside in the community. So it's our main indicator of where we should be focusing as a society, in my opinion.
So your belief is that the longer you delay justice, the less real impact it has on reducing
That's
crime?
right. Why would a victim or witness want to participate when they're being called a year later? That's what was happening in our backlog. It's telling a message to victims, what happened to you didn't matter when we wait that long. And now we're changing that to where we can center victims as a part of this public safety conversation again. If that happened to you, we want to acknowledge that happened to you. We are here and we're going to talk with you through that. Because we really are, our criminal division, from victim advocates to our prosecutors, we are the ones who walk with victims the longest through the system. And talking to them about why we might need to decline a case because it's going to be hard to prosecute or we don't have enough evidence. Why we think it's a case that we should be diverting, right, and not doing mainstream prosecution and talking them through that. And then again, through the prosecution time period.
Just for clarity, your office handles misdemeanors, correct? All felonies go to the
That's
county
right.
prosecutor?
That's right. So just so the way that things work, I talk about it like a track team. So the Seattle Police Department is the first leg so we're talking about sports. They are the first leg of that relay team. And my office does not, has any capability until leg 2, till we have that baton handoff in the form of a referral, a police report for a misdemeanor crime that's happened in the city of Seattle. If it's a felony, it should be going to the county. Some of the filing standards are quite high, and so a lot of times, though, things that are by statute a felony actually then get pushed down to misdemeanor now, and we are prosecuting things as misdemeanor that really are statutory felonies. That can start to tell a message in itself too, but we don't start till that second leg of that relay team. It's a good image for people to kind of understand. We give a recommendation then to the courts, for example, and then they're that third leg of deciding what they think based on what they have viewed in the matter.
I wanted to ask the audience, when I found out about this, I just couldn't believe it, that the county jail does not accept people charged with misdemeanors, except in cases of DUI and domestic violence. Is that true?
That was true when I started. We've started a high utilizer initiative, and so we have worked with the jail to make sure that those people are also available for booking. It's one of the tools that our police officers need. The answer is not jail, but the answer is that sometimes communities need a break from this repeat frequent criminal activity. So in the high utilizer criteria, we started, again, with that data team that we were able to really understand. When we started that, there was 118 individuals responsible for over 2,400 referrals that were coming from the Seattle Police Department to my office. So that tells me there's a lot of people who've been ignored and overlooked for a long time because they've been engaging in this activity for a long time. And I really do see criminal activity, it's a nonverbal communication. Someone is telling us all as a society that they need something, that they need some help in some form or fashion. We need to say, you can't do this type of conduct, right? We don't want there to be harm caused to others. This is where we need to intervene because otherwise we are leaving people to continue it. And then we have repeat victims. So with that high utilizer initiative, we've been able to get agreement where those individuals can be booked. I just was at our Seattle Police Department this morning, and because of our criteria, they were able to come across someone just recently, and they were able to book that person. And then we need to be making sure we have services available. There needs to be actual things that are helping someone when they are in custody. So at the release time, we have a plan, and someone is better than when they came in. But you're right, that's how it was when I started. We still need to do improvements on that.
So that list of 118 people, they're exempt from going through community court. So that's sort of a diversion program that connects them with services. Right?
That's right. Community court, as it is now, is a release-first model, and under my predecessor, there had been an agreement that everyone with certain types of crimes would go to community court. Well, community court is an alternative, right? It is not a Main Street prosecution. It is to be one where there is an ability for someone to make amends in an alternative way. That should be there for people who are showing us that they are starting to engage in criminal activity, not what was happening with those that are meeting that criteria in the high utilizer initiative, which is oftentimes we saw 20, 30, 40 referrals from Seattle Police Department, and they were still going to this community court. That's diluting that resource for those that it really is going to be helping and intended to serve. So we have made sure that with the courts, with public defenders, that we have taken those people out, because it's not working and it's not a responsive tool in that place.
So just to be clear, if you're not on that list of 118, you're still not going to get booked into the jail.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
And there are certain other types of activity, obviously felony and restraining orders, no contact orders. It's other types of events that can do that. But it is a difficult place, and Seattle Police need to have that because otherwise the futility of coming out to respond, right? And we're wanting to encourage relational policing, and we're wanting to encourage laws matter, and we're wanting to say, I'm ready to stand here at that second leg as the prosecutor. We need you to do your work and be responsive. And then to the community, we need to say, you do need to report. You need to make sure you're reporting. My data is based upon the number of referrals I get from Seattle Police Department. If you're not reporting, then there's no referrals, and then I'm not able to even start to get involved.
Yeah. I know a business owner who has some stores here in the city, and she told me that on almost a daily basis, people come in and steal the tip jar and walk out. And, you know, they call police, and it's a low priority, and nothing gets done. And I've just heard this same story from business owners over and over. It could be vandalism, it could be theft. You see people walking out of, Target with armloads of stuff. How do you fix that? I mean, it is such a pervasive problem in our city. Low-level, persistent crime that is causing people not to want to come to Seattle. It's causing business to want to leave Seattle.
Yeah.
So how do you fix that?
Well, it's taken us a while to get here. As I mentioned, my time when I moved here, it's very different, and it doesn't mean we need to be all back in the in the past, but there are parts of that really were important. And it is where it's a social message, where we all need to know that our laws matter. We've agreed upon a set of rules by which we all live by to live in close proximity of one another. That's a reflection of our values, is what our laws really are. Again, I can't do anything until I have that referral from the Seattle Police. That means we do need to have a number of officers who are responding and able to write the reports so that we can do that intervention. And I think that the more people who speak out, right, you need to vote, you need to tell decision makers what's important to you. You put people like me in places of decision making, and you need to let them know what you expect of them. And I really do think, frankly, you should be telling all of them. They need to be talking to everybody, every decision maker that is involved with public safety. It just should not be. And that was not the case prior to my arrival. There was no communication between my predecessor and the county prosecutor's office. And now we have ongoing weekly working relationships, because I instigated that, because how in the world could we not be working together and talking when some of our high utilizer initiative meeting criteria people are also people that they see. So they're committing crime. We need to be talking about that. That was not going on before. I think that is where we will start to see some change, is when we really have decision makers willing to work together, regardless of who that is.
It's interesting that your office sees people once they've sort of broken the rules, and many of them are broken. Our society doesn't bat an eye at incarcerating someone at $50,000 a year. They're like, lock them up, put them in jail. But it seems like that some of these offenders may not have a home. They might be dependent on drugs or alcohol. Are we doing enough as a city to meet those offenders where they are? Like, it seems like if you're a homeless offender, it seems like maybe the first step to getting that person off the streets and stop breaking into cars would be to get them into housing. But you tell that to people who are taxpayers and they're like, oh, that's a waste of money. But they don't bat an eye. They'd rather spend 50 grand a year putting them in a jail. So, I mean, I'd love your perspective. I know this isn't sort of your policy purview, but what do you think? Do you think we're doing enough as a city to fix the root cause of this?
I mean, you're right, I am not a policy decision maker in that space, but I am a mother. And this is the whole reason why I'm in this, is because I've had to try to answer my young children's very direct questions in child-appropriate language, and it became inexplicable to me, which is why I then started on this road. And so the urgency that does need to be there, in my opinion, is that there is social modeling happening to young minds every single day. Whether there is an adult conversation unpacking it or not, it is observationally occurring. They see people who look like they are self-organized and operating in a certain way, and they walk by others who look like they are not, and they notice what the ones who are organized do, which is ignore and look away. So there is social modeling happening of generations who are growing up thinking that's how we problem solve when there's someone clearly in need. I'm not okay with that, because that makes me really uncomfortable. I don't want my children to grow up thinking that's what we do. So I've chosen to do what I can, use the skills I have, which is this. But when it does overlay with drugs, with addiction, that should be one of our number one focuses as a society. Overdose deaths are skyrocketing, and it is a driver of a lot of criminal activity, in my opinion. And that is really one of the largest enemies I think we have as a society in America, frankly. The overdose deaths, I say this number everywhere I go. In 2021, across our country, under age 45 for COVID-related deaths were 26,000 people. For 2021, across our country, for overdose deaths, under age 45 was over 100,000 people. So to me, that really is a sense of urgency, and it's far past just the city. I cannot get people into help. I cannot get people mentally restored at Western State Hospital when they are found incompetent to stand trial. And some of them that are on meeting this high utilized initiative, I can look back and see their criminal activity started in the city back in 2014. And they weren't incompetent then, and now they are, because we have left them using substances, and now their minds are where they will not regain self-sufficiency. So it is urgent, in my opinion. I have a small area that I'm in charge of, but I certainly, as a mother, see the future and have a lot of concern.
One more question before we open it up to the audience. Let's talk about some of the ongoing challenges that your office has identified. People talk a lot about Third and Pine and what a trouble spot that's been, but can you identify maybe 2 or 3 hot spots, areas of concern?
I don't do so much on geography, even though, again, with my data team, we also look at what we have so we understand where in the city it's happening. I do know, particularly in the International District, it's really difficult there. They have been hard hit, and often neighborhoods that are less likely to have access to people to talk about what needs to happen. I go out everywhere, and if you haven't met Marina, she's talked to her if you want us to come out. We go everywhere. We were at another Rotary a few weeks ago, maybe 12 people that came. Loved it. We come here, you've got this size. Love it. I will go everywhere, because it is so important that I think people have access to people who are decision makers, so we really see and understand what's happening in your neighborhood for you. And so I don't have specific areas, I have topics, right? So it is substance use, it is the interlay that it has with criminal activity, and it really does need to be understood that misdemeanor crimes should not be swept off as nothing, that they're low level. These are quality of life, these are difficult things, and if we have the social erosions of those laws, you have invited an increasing, right? And so there really does need to be emphasis of a parallel track. We cannot just triage as a society that felonies are the only thing we pay attention to. Why do we want to wait unless and until someone commits a felony that we intervene? We should be doing it very much early on.
Great. Thank you. All right, let's go to questions in the audience.
Virginia McKenzie has a question.
Hi, thanks for being here. Could you please speak to the open street prostitution on North Aurora? This is anecdotal, but it feels like it's getting worse and not better. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. And I do know I live in the North End, and so that is a topic that I am daily having conversations about what to do. I do know as the first woman city attorney and my criminal chief, Natalie Walton Anderson, she's the first woman to lead our criminal division at the city attorney's office. We feel completely obligated and will not look away from that situation because it is predominantly women and particularly women of color. So we are not going to stand by and just ignore it. I do agree with you, it's increasing. We are actively having conversations about what can we do, because again, the social modeling is happening. And most of the time that is people that are trafficked. It is, again, Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Most of the people who are there are women, and most have been involved in some form or fashion with domestic violence. And the way that they are coerced to be out there is also a form of domestic violence. If you do not know what I'm talking about when I say the power and control wheel, I encourage you to look that up. Those are signs of abusive relationships, and individuals who get wrapped up into that with someone and then is trafficked out there. I'm not going to just stand by. So I don't have a direct answer for you because it is something I'm actively looking to do, because I do hear you and I do agree, and not doing something is not acceptable.
All right, Ken Grant for our Zoom audience.
Quick question from the Zoom. One, there's a comment. I would welcome yearly updates to Rotary about downtown crime statistics.
Okay.
Not a bad idea.
Well, so here's the one thing. So crime would be an SPD stat, right? They are the ones who keep track of crime. I base my data on Seattle Police referrals, right? So again, I get the ones that they refer that would match misdemeanors. They send what matches felonies closely to the county prosecutor. So it's not that I would be able to provide the data on crime, but that would be an SPD data point, which they have a very good team. And that would probably is already available with heat maps, and they do heat maps for that. So I actually see it and I know what they're talking about. So I think that is in existence.
Okay. So the other question is, have you a position on mandatory drug treatment for chronic offenders who steal to fund a drug habit?
Well, that is a space we also need to talk about as a society, because again, it is, we have got to intervene for people, as I said my stat before about the number of people we're losing, and that it's of a younger generation. When Mike was talking about the importance of sports and what that really can bring to a community, right, it can also bring to a young person. I grew up playing soccer, played soccer at Baylor, and coached my daughter's team, and so sports have played an important part for me because it gave me a lot of mental grit. I'm a CrossFitter. Now we call it a pain cave. That gets me through a lot of things, is to have my own mental pain cave where you just have an ability to just be like, I think I can still do more, right? Just having that little bit of belief of like, yeah, I don't really know if I can pick up that barbell, but my coach said, add more fives. Okay, they believe I can, I believe I can, now I'm gonna do it. We need to have a place where we can believe in people, say we actually believe you can do more, and it starts making sure that we tell them they matter. This is not all they can do for society, is to go and continue with the addiction and feed it through theft, that they really can, they do have a different purpose for society. So I'm very, very focused on that.
Another question in the
Sorry. Hi, Anne. Thank you for coming today. I know you've been out in the field with us and have seen the despair of young men and women in our community as a cry for help to do something. So everything you're doing and have been doing has saved lives. I know that for a fact. So thank you. I held a grown man in my arms recently who was crying with his foil in his hand and his pipe slumped over in Belltown. His name is Theodore, and he said, Andrea, I can't get arrested for my open warrants. I said, how much do you spend every day for your fentanyl? He goes, $180. What do? I car prowl. So that is real. He said, I can't get arrested for my open warrant. So everything you're doing to change that is saving his life and getting him towards one step to thinking about his sobriety. He also asked me for treatment, and I picked up the phone and called Providence, couldn't get in because he didn't have ID. So whatever the council is doing, and I think Sarah Nelson is getting behind friction-free access for 24/7 treatment. So I'm hearing good things. And that $50,000 conversation should be a $50,000 treatment bed for that person, not housing, not jail, treatment. It's drugs, drugs, drugs. Now that you are doing a better job working people through the criminal justice system, people may be prowling less, but what's happening, and this is, I guess, kind of for your own messaging, is my boots on the ground, testimonials from men who are not gay. The number one thing they are now doing to support their drug is prostitution. And sexual predators are waving their money out of cars to vulnerable men. They're being targeted to turn tricks for just a little bit of money for whatever gets them through their addiction. So there's a lot, there's what's happening on Aurora, but we have to start talking about this sex offender, the sexual predators that are preying on people who are suffering on the streets. I mean, it is very, very sad.
So I guess, Ann, the question a lot of people are wondering is, what happens to people who are drug addicted, who commit a property crime, and they go before the judge? What happens right now?
Well, what happens if there is possible incompetency, right? They're going through mental health court. And unfortunately, then if they are incompetent, then we have to dismiss, and there's not a place where they go. So then we are seeing them back on the street. And that is, to me, the missing piece, where we really do need to have a place, because, again, we've allowed this addiction to grow, and when people are in that space, they make different choices. Everyone makes different choices when you're in a sense of fear, right? And fear is subjective, and when someone's afraid for their life, right, like something like that, they're going to do what they need to do to not have that fear. We need to make sure that we can get people into help.
But taking the incompetence factor out, just a person who is competent but drug addicted, does a crime, how come they're not, I mean, are they mandated to go into treatment, or what happens? I'm curious.
No, we don't have that. It is an offering of service, and it's a complex reason as to why that is, but you can hear, and I agree, that it's really the best help we can do is to be that limit for someone who can't be that for themselves. It's not my favorite place to be in that line, but we need someone to serve this role for society so that nobody else needs to feel that responsibility. I think everyone in this room probably agrees with me that you don't want to walk down the street and see that you know someone is in the midst of that. And you don't want to have that sense of hopelessness of what can I do? I even have that sometimes as I walk around, and that's not okay. And so push people like me, push people in decision-making places, because it really does need to be worked on and coordinated, and it has to be done at multi-jurisdictions and multi-departments. Make your elected officials talk to one another, because it's the only way we're going to improve that for people so they're not out dying.
Well, we appreciate the work that you're doing, and you hit on that point earlier, that we all need to engage. We need to engage with the city leadership at every level to address the issue. Ann Davison, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is a sobering topic, but we appreciate all the work that you're doing. And in recognition of the generosity of your time, Seattle 4 has contributed to Harvest Against Hunger, which provides healthy meal components to food banks. So 600 servings of healthy produce have been given in your name in honor of your time today. So thank you. Thank you, Kathy and Ken, for fielding questions from our members. And I also want to recognize the amazing and generous club sponsors like Live Oak AV and our gold sponsors, Liz Powell on Remax, of Remax on Market, and Bob Alexander. All right, now I would like to welcome Nicole Klein, co-VP of Membership, to share updates about our empowerment program as well as member engagement opportunities. Nicole.
All right, super quick. So first of all, Asunta had, 17 people on her tour last Thursday. If anyone's here went. It was a beautiful day. 14 for dinner, so thanks for showing up. Up ahead, we have October 20th, World Polio Day. And remember, it's not Mark, but we do have Kathy Gibson there who will be emceeing. And there's $1.2 billion that the Gates Foundation pledged for polio eradication. So yeah, that's big. So you can register on the district website for that. October 27th, we don't yet have a time, but if you talk to Ashley Berman or Tabitha Kloss for YRL, you can go to an escape room event. Not my thing, but hey, if you're smart and you like to be trapped in a room and eventually get out, so sign up with one of those two. November 6th, I'm pushing again the banana bread. Remember, Elwha Exploration Day, hosted by Nature Bridge from 9 to 3 in Port Angeles. And I guess they're letting us register by this week now, an extension. So that's it.
All right, thank you, Nicole. And now let's bring up our Prince of Programs, Ken Grant, to highlight upcoming speakers.
The applause gets lamer and lamer and lamer. And yet, we still bring you some of the best speakers in all of Seattle. So I don't know. I'm just saying. Anne, thank you very much. Mike, if you could just become funny, that would be... That was meant to be funny, not, oh my God, all of a sudden, people take me seriously. I don't know when that's, yeah. Next week is not me. Next week is our friend Anita Dalmia. So she created a game for middle schoolers. During COVID, she was one of the many of us that pivoted and figured out that fake news versus real news is really, really important when it comes to kids, particularly in the middle schools. So this will be a really, really good conversation. I cannot wait for this conversation. With her is a conversation, separate, short program, about the Awa River. That's right, with Kurt Miller. This will be a really good conversation too. We haven't had this conversation at the club for a long time, so we welcome Kurt. And then in 2 weeks, so that's Zoom, in 2 weeks we're back at the Westin. Any show of hands, how many people know Matt Gardner? Okay, anybody want to tell me how flippin' funny that dude is and how compelling he is? Because when you first see the word economic, you're like, this guy knows how to he's like Mike, right? He knows how to put sports into perspective. This guy absolutely knows how to put economics into perspective, and you will never be bored, and you get so much out of him. So we're really excited to have him back. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Prince of Programs, Ken. We appreciate you. So in addition to the various social and engagement opportunities for Rotarians, there are also a number of ways that you can volunteer and give back. And I just wanted to call out a few opportunities through our service program, specifically the Education Committee. Members can be mentors to underrepresented students interested in attending college. The committee is also looking for professionals who are willing to speak individually or on an industry panel at a college and career fair. And the Rotary Business Mentors Committee is recruiting members to advise business students from the UW Foster School of Business. So if you're interested in any of these opportunities, or if you just want to learn about other opportunities where you can get engaged in a project or a committee to give back, follow up with our VP of Service, Doug Seto. Doug, where are you? in the back here. Just tap Doug and he can point you in the right direction. And you may have seen it on the slides at the beginning of the, as we were sitting for lunch, but I wanted to share that the memorial celebration for Seattle Rotarian Todd Sommerfeld will be 2 o'clock this Friday, October 21st, at the Mountaineers Clubhouse in Magnuson Park. All Rotarians are welcome. A number of our fellow Rotarians will be on hand to participate, and the celebration will last about an hour, and there will be a social hour following. Now, a quick recap of Seattle sports. Mike really hit on a lot of what happened last weekend, but we had the full gamut, as he said, of highs and lows. I was at that, along with Renee, Mike's wife. I was at the Mariners game for those 16 innings, playoff baseball games. 18, thank you. I lost track after a while. When you have a second, seventh inning stretch, you're in a whole nother game. It did end the Mariners' postseason hunt, but on the other hand, as Mike said, the Husky game started 1.5 hours after the Mariner game started, and it ended well before the Mariners did, but they earned a well-earned win, and meanwhile, the Kraken have lost their first 4 games of the regular season, but the Seahawks surprised a lot of folks with a really solid win this past Sunday. Now, I know about what I'm turning my sights to, and I hope you are as well, and that is this weekend's OL Reign semifinal against Kansas City. And as you may remember from last week, I mentioned that we were really shooting for 20,000 tickets or better at Lumen Field. And I just had a report that we're already over 15,000 have sold. And so I think that we are going to hit our goal. This Friday, the city will light up in red and blue, while the Reign player, Megan Rapinoe, and a couple of her cohorts will raise the flag on the Space Needle. There'll be a rally at Pike Place Market on Friday, so lots of great things ahead for the Reign. Now, speaking of Megan Rapinoe, today I'll leave you with one of her quotes. The more you stand up for others, the easier it is to stand up for yourself. Meeting adjourned.
I think the address for the Mountaineers Club was the old address, not the new one.
Okay,
It's 7700 Sandpoint Way at Magnuson Park.
so the address for the Mountaineers Club is 7700, is that right? Sandpoint Way, Magnuson Park. So check the address for the Mountaineers Club before you go. Meeting adjourned.